Today we're going to take you through the feature set and potential workflows of Camtasia, our video editing software. Now, you might think this session is just for beginners, but even if you're a seasoned Camtasia user, like I am, there's a good chance you'll get some nuggets of knowledge all along the way. And if you don't have Camtasia already, no problem. We have a link for a free trial in the description down below. So grab that and follow along. Today we're going to create a video walking through the TechSmith webinar website. Hey there, Jason with TechSmith. Let's find TechSmith webinars on our webpage. TechSmith.com, go to support and choose webinars. Then find exactly what you're looking for by filtering on the left-hand side by product and by type. You'll see all the available upcoming sessions right there on your screen. Hope you found this useful, and thanks for watching. So welcome to the Camtasia editor. Now, if you notice, I've already got some content in here, and I'll show you how to get to that point. But the first thing we're going to do is we need to save this project, because if you notice at the top of the editor, it says Untitled Project. That doesn't help me. I'm guessing it doesn't help you. So let's start by saving our project. The easiest way to do that is to go up to the File menu and choose File, Save. What it's going to do is give you a dialog to save a normal project like you would inside of any Windows machine. But what I want to draw your attention to is there is a little tick mark down here at the bottom that's checked by default called Create Standalone Project. This is magic. I am not good at keeping track of all my files. Well, Camtasia is going to help me. It's going to create a contained folder, and everything inside of my media bin that I have in there now or add later on is going to be in this single folder with the recording project. What does that mean? It means if I move it from my desktop to another folder or another location on my computer, I can rest assured everything's going to be kept together in one place. Thank goodness. So let's go ahead and do this by giving it a name. We're just going to call this Studio Webinar, and I'll click Save. When that's done, it's going to rename it at the top of the screen, and we are set to go with our editing process. Now, before we get into the entirety of the editing, because the editing is a lot of fun, let me give you a little walkthrough of the editor itself. There are four main parts of the editor that I want you to draw your attention to. First, over here on the left-hand side, we have the Media Bin Library Toolkit area. So all of our tools and things that we're going to use inside of Camtasia are located here on the left. In the middle, we have our canvas. A lot of your editing, especially the visual stuff, is going to happen inside of the canvas. On the right, you're going to have the Properties panel. Now this, to be honest, you're going to have a lot of control over what you put on your screen and what it can do anytime you move over and visit the Properties panel, including the way that it dynamically changes depending on the type of media or the type of tool you've selected. But we'll show you that here in a little bit as well. And last but certainly not least, at the bottom, we have the timeline, where we've got multiple tracks, which in this case, there's two available to us with the recording that we have already ready for this project. If I needed to bring anything else into this project, whether it's a still image, music, other recording, I found that the easiest way to bring content into Camtasia is by using the plus button located at the bottom left of the media bin. By clicking that plus button, you have a couple options. One is to import media, which could be from any drive or any source connected to your computer. Or if you have stuff stored in Google Drive, you can grab it from there too. Before we get into our editing, let's take a look at the tools that are available to us right inside of Camtasia. Along the left-hand side, you'll see several different menu options, starting with the Favorites menu, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. We have our Media Bin, which is where all the content that you're going to use for this particular project is stored. We also have the library. The library, with any install of Camtasia, in this case we're using Camtasia 2023, is you're going to have a series of royalty-free assets, everything from graphical elements to music to animated backgrounds, lots of different things that you can use in your project right now without having to go out and source it from anywhere. Most people ask, well, what's the difference between the media bin and the library? Food analogy time, here you go. The media bin is where you're going to have all the pieces, parts for the recipe you're making right now. Where the library is like your pantry. You can always go there to get flour, you can always go to get sugar. You can always have things ready, because you can even save some of your elements to your library to use across multiple projects. Below the library is the annotations. In fact, if you think about Camtasia, there's a good chance you're thinking about text on the screen, callouts, arrows, some kind of sketch motion. All of those are found in here. And the first time you pull into a tool like Annotations, you'll notice there's actually tabs across the top. Everything from callouts to our arrows and lines to the shapes, to my favorite part, which includes the blur and the spotlight tool and some pixelation available to you. You also have the sketch motion callouts And if you're doing some educational pieces where you want to show how to do a keyboard shortcut, we can capture those with the keyboard callout, and you can have those as an element in your video as well. Now, you might have noticed a couple of the elements that I've exposed have this little yellow star in the upper right-hand corner. Those stars are going to correlate to my favorite tools I use on a regular basis in multiple videos. Because they're starred, they are actually the ones that show up in the favorites menu we kind of glossed over a little earlier. And if I ever find anything in any of the tools that I want to add to that favorites menu, no problem. Hover over the one you want, like this blur tool, and you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner there is a white star or gray star. If I want it in my favorites menu, all I have to do is click on it. It turns it to a yellow star, and that blur tool now exists inside of my favorites menu. And you'll notice there are quite a few things in my favorites menu. And it's helpful because there's so many tools inside of Camtasia, it's easier for me to go find them in my favorites menu than to dig through all the menus later on, especially when I'm pressed for time. So we talked about all the different annotations that are available to you. Let's talk about visual effects. This is where you kind of feel like a rock star because there's a bunch of different effects here inside of Camtasia that can level up your video or add that little bit of polish that you may not have thought possible. Everything from background removal. This is a powerful tool, especially if you're recording in an environment where you don't want to expose what's behind you. You can apply that. We have blend modes, which is great for coloring and changing the visual aspect of your video. You can blur region, adding clip speed, adding borders. There's so much in here. Things that I use on a regular basis, to be honest, is the motion blur, which motion blur allows you to add a little bit of movement to something. And we're going to do some of that when we do our editing here in a couple minutes. So stay tuned for that. There's lots of options inside of your visual effects. And there's also a second tab at the top here called filters. The filters are described as LUTs. If you're not familiar with a LUT, it's a lookup table. It's an applied series of filtered colors. So if you're looking for a specific look for your video, there's a good chance you can find them here inside of Camtasia. And if you can't, Camtasia supports you importing those LUTs files as well, so you can add your own dynamic range, your own color effect. If you want it to be colder or more mysterious, you have that available to you as well. Transitions. Powerful piece of media where you can move from one piece of media to another. You've probably seen a rotating cube or a fade in, a fade out. There is over 100 different types of transitions inside of Camtasia. There's tons of different types of fades. There's tons of different types of 3D effects, blurs. There are wipes, there are splits. There are so many in here that there are a few that I use on a regular basis. And what did I do, of course? I added them to my favorites menu as shown by those yellow stars in the upper right-hand corner. So definitely take the time to explore. With great power comes great responsibility. I would encourage you that if you find a couple of transitions that you really like, pick one to stick with in one particular video, and then maybe apply a different one to a different video. That way, if you're staying excited watching your video, others will as well. Moving on, we've got animations. Oh my gosh, this is where you get to the power of Camtasia. Inside of Camtasia 2023 and previous versions, I'm on the Windows versions, by the way, we have two tabs on the top of that screen. We have zoom and pan, and we have animations. Now, if you're a Mac user of Camtasia, you're not going to see this zoom and pan menu. You're going to see an animations menu, which offers a bunch of pre-built animation capabilities to you. There's lots of them in here. Full opacity, restore, scale to fit, tilting, it's all in there. But every one of them derives itself from this custom animation in the upper left-hand corner, including, if you want, to be the ability to zoom and pan around your screen. Now, not going to lie, I like using the zoom and pan on the Windows machine, and I'll show you how to use that a little bit later, but I'll also teach you how to use the custom animation to make Camtasia do what you want it to do. Below animations, we have a tab called behaviors. So behaviors are a combination of both animations and transitions built into one easily drag and dropped type of feature. They are designed ideally for text, but they can be used on still pieces of images as well. So pictures, documents, stuff like that. You'll notice there's a couple in here that have yellow stars on it. So if you're paying attention, they are some of my favorites that I've added to my favorites menu as well. Below that, we have cursor effects, everything from the ability to change your cursor color, to add a highlight, to add a magnification, or if you're like me and you talk a lot with your hands, you tend to talk with your mouse. So you can use something like the cursor path creator to either straighten out or correct any overzealous movements with your mouse, or you can create a brand new path from scratch to make sure that your attention is drawing to where you want your viewers to see. You've also got things like audio effects, the ability to fade in and fade out if you're using music, which are elements available inside of the library, or one of my favorites, which is emphasize audio, which we might be talking about a little bit later on. There's a couple more here, voice narration, which is the ability just to voice over a section. And if you're using a Windows machine like I am, you also have the ability to add closed captions that you can edit right here in the program. So now that we've taken a light look at the tools, let's get into editing this project. We'll go back to our media bin because it's just a comfortable place for me to be. You'll notice that inside of the media bin, I have something called a recording file. In technical terms, it's a TREC file or a TechSmith recording file. Inside of that are two elements of the video pieces that I brought in, and they are shown on the track below. Track 1 has my screen recording, as it is labeled down here with the word screen, and above that is on track 2, my camera recording, which also includes audio. By the way, how do I know there's audio in there? Well, I can see the waveform sitting there on top of the track itself. So I see my face and I see the audio form, which means I've got a webcam or camera of some sort and audio built into it. Now, before we do any editing, let's just play this back for just a quick second. Hey there, Jason with TechSmith. Let's find TechSmith webinars on our webpage. TechSmith. Okay, so this was a walkthrough of the TechSmith webinar webpage that you saw at the beginning of this video. What we want to do is make this video a little bit more visually interesting, and we want it to reflect a little bit of what Camtasia can do. We're going to do that by adding some, not all, of the tools and capabilities inside of Camtasia. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my webcam and I'm going to make it full screen. Not because I'm vain, but because I'm the one introducing the video and I want the focus to be on me before I go to the screen recording itself. So because it's a separate track, which means it's a separate recorded piece of media, because I did record this with Camtasia, and Camtasia is smart enough to separate both the webcam and the screen recording from each other, I'm going to drag this to the upper left-hand corner. Thank goodness for those yellow snap lines because I don't want to guess where I'm putting it. I want it in its exact place. I'm also going to resize it so that I have the entirety of my webcam available to me. So when I start my video, it's a whole lot of me. Hey there, Jason with TechSmith. Let's find TechSmith webinars on our webpage, techsmith.com. So at this point, the editing truly begins because I look away from my camera. What am I looking at that point? My screen recording. You, as a viewer, can't see it right now, so we need to get my webcam out of the way. The easiest way to do this is to add some sort of animation to it. We could fade it out, we could move it around. I'm going to combine a couple of things right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, which is the playhead. The playhead inside of Camtasia on the tracks there is one of the most powerful tools because it gives you complete control over where you're editing at that moment in time inside of Camtasia. We are going to add an animation. Now, remember when we visited the animation tool before, we had that zoom and pan, and we had an animations tab. For this webcam, I'm going to use the custom animation found in the animations tab. To apply a custom animation, simply click on it and drag it down onto the timeline, onto the track and media that you want to affect. And when I drag it down, you'll notice a little arrow shows up on my screen. The arrow on the track here is the actual animation. It's in technical movie terms, it's called a keyframe. What it's doing is it's telling us that you want something to be done by Camtasia at that moment. If we bring our playhead back and play that video forward, or even just scrub across it, you'll notice when it hits the arrow and finishes over it, absolutely nothing is happening. And that's because we haven't told Camtasia exactly what we want it to do. Now, this animation arrow is pretty powerful, as I said before. The things you want to know about is this. The animation will start when the playhead hits the tail of the arrow, and it will complete when it hits the head of the arrow. The length of that arrow, the length of that animation, or how is reflective upon how fast or slow the animation happens. If the arrow is a little bit longer, the playhead's going to take a little bit more time to go across it, which is going to slow down the process or make it a little bit more gradual. If the arrow is shorter, the playhead will go over it quickly, and your animation will happen much faster. The other thing you want to note is when you click on the animation arrow and it turns yellow, that means it's active. It means it's ready for you to give it some commands. Double-clicking on the head of the arrow snaps the playhead to the end of that animation so that you know any instruction that you give to Camtasia at that point will happen at the end of the animation. So Now let's add some information to Camtasia about what we want to have happen. The easiest thing is, well, I want to resize my camera. I'm going to drop it down to a smaller size and maybe bring it down to the bottom right-hand corner of my screen. Me personally, I don't like it sitting in the bottom corner like that, so I'm going to actually grab it and shift it up and over just a little bit to create some space. Maybe like that. I also don't like the idea of having a big rectangular box at the bottom of my screen, so I'm going to add a couple of other tools. One is the crop tool. The crop tool is found at the top of your canvas, and it looks like this symbol right here to the right of the hand. When I click on that, the outline of my webcam turns blue, and it allows me to crop out sections of that particular piece of media. For me, I'm going to crop it over just a little bit. I'm going to try and make myself a little bit more of a square, and I'll show you why. That looks pretty good. When I'm done cropping, I'm going to switch back over to the selection tool, which is just the arrow here at the top. And I'm going to add a couple of other features. One of them, one of my favorite ones, is over here in the visual effects part of Camtasia. There's a tool in the visual effects tab called corner rounding. And it's going to be up here just a little bit. To apply corner rounding to that piece of media, I can either drag it down onto the timeline, or I can drag it onto the piece of media right on the canvas. In this case, I'm going to drag it right to the media on the canvas. When I do that, I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the video, that properties panel that's on the right-hand side of the screen is extremely powerful. It dynamically changes based on the type of media or the tool that you've selected. In this case, it has changed and added the corner rounding to that particular piece of media. Now, above it, there's basic information about the piece of media, right? Its place in space, its Z-axis, its Y-axis, its X-axis, its position, the width and height of it, things that I typically don't mess with on a regular basis. But every time you add a new visual effect or part of the tool inside of Camtasia, it's going to add it to the bottom of that list. In this case, we've only added one thing, which is corner rounding. To apply corner rounding, all four of my corners are selected. If I didn't want to select any particular one, I can deselect it by clicking any number of the corner boxes. But in this case, I want to have all four of them selected. We're going to up the radius by dragging it to the right, and we're going to create our own little hole punch. Some people might use a different term, but I just kind of like the idea of it looking like a hole punch, so the video has a little bit more personality. It's gone from that rectangle at the beginning down to a circle hole punch style video in the corner. So if I take my playhead, which is down here on the timeline, and I drag that back to the left, you'll see the motion that we created with that animation, where it then plays, it starts to crop down and turn into that hole punch at the bottom. I also want to add one more effect to this particular piece of media. And I mentioned it earlier on, it's one that I use on a pretty regular basis. It's still in that visual effects portion of our tool bin. And that is this one, motion blur. Now I say I use it a lot, but apparently I haven't added it to my favorites. So let's do that right now by clicking on that star in the upper right-hand corner. So it's available to me in my favorites menu. Motion blur does this. Before I apply it, I want to just show you. When you bring the playhead back, you have the ability to see the animation, and you'll see that the image moves like we wanted it to, but it just kind of does it in this static, stiff way. Motion blur adds just a little bit of blurring to that motion, so you can actually feel like it's being sucked down from the full screen down into that corner. So to add motion blur, we simply click on it, drag it either to the media track down here on the bottom, or to the media itself on the canvas, which we'll do right now. And now, in that properties panel on the right, you'll notice corner rounding is here, but if we scroll down just a little bit, motion blur is part of that media as well. By the way, you might have noticed there's these little toggle switches over here on the right in the properties panel. Those are helpful. And they're really helpful because I can apply different effects to my media and I can toggle them on and off to see how they look. Maybe I'm not a big fan of the corner rounding. I'm a big fan of the corner rounding. But maybe I don't want to see what it looks like in this particular version. I can simply toggle it off. No harm, no foul. It's available to me as I need it. So let's bring that playhead back in front of that animation, and you'll see that blurring effect happen as we play it forward. So we've done a few light animations, light edits to our video. Let's play back that little section just to see how it looks right now. Oh, by the way, pro tip, You can click on your play button right here, but more often than not, my hand is on or near my keyboard. To play or pause a playback of your video, all you have to do is hit your spacebar and it'll do it for you. Let's take a look. On our webpage, TechSmith.com, go to support and choose webinars. I think that looks pretty good. Thankfully, because I'm using a video editor, I can make changes and corrections to anything that I perceive to be wrong, like this error I made right here. I am talking in this video about stuff that you can't see because I've blocked the entirety of that recording of the screen with my webcam. Let me show you. I'm going to play the video back from the beginning, about 4 or 5 seconds worth, and we're going to identify when I start talking about the screen. Hey there, Jason with TechSmith. Let's find TechSmith webinars on our webpage. Right there, I look away from my webcam to the screen. At that point, it's time to get my webcam out of the way. But I already made all these edits and these animations farther down the timeline. It's okay. You can actually click and select that animation arrow and drag it back to the left so that the animation happens and we expose our screen, which we're actually doing the teaching portion, right? We're actually showing where to find webinars on our webpage. So now when we play the video back, let's find TechSmith webinars on our webpage. TechSmith.com, go to support and choose. So I immediately start talking about the webpage. All right, let's make our next set of edits. First, we want to play back a little bit of our video to find out what we're doing next in our process. TechSmith.com, go to support and choose webinars. Then find, okay, if you'll notice, something happened when I was making this original screen recording. And that was I talk about clicking the webinars button, and then you see this gap of time with this little blank space. Well, if you've been on the internet before, you know if you click on something, it takes a minute for something to load. That doesn't look professional to me, and it certainly doesn't look polished. So let's make a correction to that right now. And we're going to lean on the product a little bit more by using the selection tool one more time. If you might have noticed on our selection tool, there's little buttons on the sides. There's a green tab on the left-hand side, and there's a red tab on the right. That is called the selection tool. So this tool actually has 2 names. It's the playhead, and it's a selection tool. The selection tool allows you to make very specific selections along your timeline that you can make edits to your video very precisely. Here's how it works. I'm going to find where that, just before the page loads, and I'm going to drag the right side, the red tab along the right, out a little bit until the page loads and give it a little bit more time. So as I've made a selection with the selection tool, you'll notice on the timeline there is actually a space that's been selected and it's a different color. Pro tip, while that is selected, you can use that space bar on your keyboard to play back just that section of video. And it will only play that section. So if you're looking to correct an error or you're looking to time something out, you have the ability to do that. This is something that I teach people often, and I'm going to teach it to you right now. I want to get rid of that section of the video. Well, naturally, it makes you think you want to hit the delete key. If I do that, it does do what I asked it to, which it deletes it. But it also leaves this. This is now blank gap of space in our video. And that's not what I was hoping for. I was kind of hoping just to remove it and have the video keep going. Well, we're going to lean on Camtasia one more time to fix this for us because this is not our intent for this particular video. First, I'm going to undo it. There's 2 ways to undo it. If you're a keyboard shortcut person, Control-Z on Windows, Command-Z on Mac, or Command-Delete to do that same ripple delete motion. Or there's a ribbon along the bottom left-hand side of your screen that has a lot of commonly used tools, everything from undo and redo to cut, copy, and paste, and even a few more that we might get into a little later. So let's undo that deletion, which places it right back into our timeline, and we're going to do something that's called a ripple delete. It's kind of like a delete, it's a little bit more powerful. A ripple delete, also known as a cut, is going to remove that content from the timeline just like before. But then it's going to take everything to the right of that content and drag it back to the left and snap it into place, therefore eliminating that section that we just deleted, that whole gap of space. Here's what it looks like. With the selection made with the selection tool, I can either use the keyboard shortcut Control-X to cut, or I can use that ribbon as we were just showing and use the little scissors there to cut it out. Instantly, that portion of the video is now gone. The selection is collapsed. And if we move the playhead just a little bit, you'll actually notice these lines on the timeline. If you really get in close, you'll look and see that it has been stitched together. It actually looks like a piece of thread has been putting those two pieces together. Visually, it's just showing you where a ripple delete was made, but the video itself will play back nice and smooth. It'll create what's called a jump cut. You may have seen these in plenty of videos, everything from online to training, where it's an instantaneous change of state in the video from one portion to another. But now we've created the opportunity for that loading screen to be gone, and we can move on with our edits. Now that we've made that ripple delete, let's play our video back to see what the result is. Using, of course, that spacebar to start the playback. And choose webinars. Then find exactly what you're looking for by okay, not bad, looks pretty good. There's a lot happening on our screen recording right now. There's images on the right, and we start talking about the filters showing up on the left. Let's help our viewers see a little bit more detail by zooming in to that section of the video on the left-hand side. That's where we're going to use Camtasia's animation tab and the zoom and pan found in there. So let's bring our playhead back to the point where we start talking about those filters. Find exactly what you're looking for by filtering on the left-hand side by product. So right about here where I start to say filtering based on product. Same as before, we're going to make sure the playhead's in the position we want it to be. We're going to select our screen recording this time because we want to affect an animation to the screen recording and not our webcam. So with the screen recording selected on our timeline, we're going to go over to the Animations tab on the left, and we're going to choose Zoom and Pan. Now I'm going to show you this really quick on a Windows machine, and then I'll show you a way to do it on the Mac machine as well. The way to do it in a Windows machine is this. When you select Zoom and Pan, you're going to see a representation of the screen recording up in the upper left-hand corner. All you need to do is use the radio buttons to draw the focus of Camtasia into which part of the screen you want the eyes of the viewers to go to. In this case, I want to really get into the product and webinar type as we describe in the video itself. You'll notice when I added that little motion up here in the zoom and pan that two animation arrows were added to Camtasia down in the tracks. One is the actual animation on the timeline for the screen recording, which will show that zooming in to that upper left-hand corner as we've asked it to. But that same animation was added to the webcam. Now, that will draw the webcam off the screen, which might be your desired purpose. But for me, I'm trying to be the voice of authority here in this particular video. So I'm going to remove the animation from the webcam by simply selecting the animation arrow that's associated with my camera and hitting delete on my keyboard. Now, when you zoom into the upper left-hand corner of the screen, the webcam stays, the instruction is still being given, and you can draw focus on the left-hand side. Let's play our video from this point. Filtering on the left-hand side by product and by type. You'll see all the available. Okay, we've added that zoom and pan, we've applied these filters, but you'll notice that the rest of the screen changed. The results based on those filters showed up. You can't see them because we are zoomed into the left-hand side of that screen. Let me show you a little something. I'm using a mouse right now as part of my editing tool set that has a scroll wheel. Most mice, modern mice do. I'm going to actually scroll down from the canvas, and you're going to see inside of the canvas itself, inside of Camtasia. You're going to see the entirety of our recording, which is this right here. By the way, I'm going to center this really quick. This is one of those keyboard shortcuts, pro tip, that I use often. Keyboard shortcut on Windows is Alt plus C, and on a Mac, it's Option C. Just snaps everything back to the center of your screen. So helpful. If I scroll in just a little bit, you're going to see that the recording is there. The entirety of it's still there because we zoomed into a corner. We didn't cut anything. We didn't crop anything out. But because we made those changes to the filters and the rest of the screen dynamically changed, we want to show that to everyone else. So how do we do that? Well, there's a button here that I always joke with our developers that they added just for me. So let's play the video back just a little bit. Side by product and by type. You'll see all the results is what I end up saying. So I want to show the whole screen again. There's a button in the upper left-hand corner of the zoom and pan tool called Scale to Fit. This is the magic button. I like to say it's a JSON button. It's not. But when you click on that, making sure you've selected your screen recording because that's the media we want to affect with this tool. As soon as I click Scale to Fit, It's going to snap it back to full screen. Let's zoom in just a little bit on our canvas. And we'll remove the animation that was applied to our webcam so that I stay in the corner. What that does is we create the zoom over to the left-hand side of the screen so that we can see the clicking of those filters. And then we restore to see those changed results based on the filter application. Now, remember I said I'm on a Windows machine and I use zoom and pan on a regular basis because it's really helpful for drawing attention and focusing your viewer's eyes. But the zoom and pan menu like this doesn't exist in the same way on the Mac side, but if you're a Mac user, you can do the same thing. And that's done in the Animations tab using that custom animation. Why? Custom animation is a blank animation, as we showed you earlier, that you can make changes to in the Properties panel to make Camtasia do exactly what you want. So if I wanted to, let's say, create that same animation without using zoom and pan, I would do it like this. Let's click on that animation and delete it. That's the one that's zoomed us back out, scaled to fit. And we're going to add a custom animation by clicking and dragging it down onto our timeline. Double click the head of the animation arrow so that it snaps to the end of that animation. And then by using the Properties panel, we can change the scale. Make it 100% because that's what we recorded at itself. And then all I need to do is physically move that into the center of my screen. And if I don't want to do it like that, I can actually simply, if I move this back out a little bit, you'll notice that its position was changed over in the Properties panel. You can also just hit the little reset curly cues there and it snaps it right back in that position. Let's see, as we zoom in and hit that Alt-C to snap it into the middle, if it behaves the way we wanted it to based on that custom animation. You'll see all the available Cool, huh? I'm telling you, the custom animation is super powerful, but Camtasia already has a couple of those pre-built animations in that animation tab. So let's try one other way to bring you back to that full screen recording. So we'll start by clicking on the animation that we just created and hitting delete. And we'll bring our playhead back to where we want that animation to complete. While the screen is selected, we're going to choose the restore, which is the pre-built animation inside of Camtasia. We'll click on it, drag it down onto our timeline, snap it right to that playhead. And if you notice, it takes us from that zoomed in position on the left and takes you right back to that full screen gloriousness of your screen recording. So there's a place for all three of those styles of tools to apply and to use to get the same result. Find the one that works best for you. Now, at this point, you could call this video done, and it'd be okay. Your video, your rules. If you're ready to have the video shared with others, it's pretty simple to do. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the green export button. Go ahead and click on that and choose local file. This will allow you to have Camtasia render the video out as an MP4, and then you can place it wherever you'd like. Online streaming platform, local video storage file, your desktop. It's completely up to you. But I'm not quite done with this video. As a matter of fact, let's add a few more pieces of polish to it right now. I noticed a little earlier in our video, my mouse movement was a little erratic. In fact, it's happening right here in this small section. By filtering on the left-hand side by product and by type. Now, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I tend to talk with my hands. And if my hand is on the mouse is going to try and do my talking as well. Camtasia captures your cursor data. What does that mean? Position, movement of the mouse, things that we can affect later on. And the way we can affect this is by going into our cursor effects tool on the left-hand side and choosing cursor smoothing. It's going to take out a lot of those erratic movements and polish it up for us. So we'll click and drag that down onto our screen recording, which is where that mouse metadata is kept. And now we should see a noticeable amount of cursor smoothing. Now, before I play this back, I do want to call something out. Over on the right-hand side of our screen where that Properties panel is, remember, it changes dynamically depending on the tool or the piece of media you've selected. There is this green button here that says Edit Cursor Path. We talked about it lightly earlier, and if you want to learn more about it, you can go ahead and click on this to watch a video about how to use cursor path editing or to even create your own. If we play this video back from this point, we should see a markedly improved smooth cursor experience. Looking for by filtering on the left-hand side by product and by type. I can't move it that straight on my own. Thank goodness Camtasia has cursor smoothing available to me. Now, there's a lot more edits we could do, but I'm going to make 2 more major edits in my mind. We're going to go back to the beginning of our video. Pro tip, if you see along the top of the timeline, you'll see our little zoom slider that allows us to see more or less of our timeline at once. There's actually a little magnifying glass here. If you click on that, it snaps the entirety of your project into one visible area. Doesn't matter if your video is 10 seconds long or 4 hours long, it'll snap it all so you can see the visual portion of the beginning all the way through to the end. Our video just kind of starts with me in webcam mode. Hey there, Jason with TechSmith. Let's find, it's a little jarring for me, so I'd like to add a little bit of visual element to the beginning, which is going to allow me to make one quick edit and add something from the Camtasia library. Ready for this pro tip? Let's bring our playhead all the way back to the beginning of our video. Now we need to create some space because we want to put a visual element in front of all this content. But we just spent all this time editing and timing things out and making things look animated and great. I don't want to goof any of that up. Don't worry. If you hold down your Shift key on your keyboard and click and drag the playhead to the right, you will move everything on your timeline at once, keeping everything in sync, not messing up any of those edits that you've already made, and leaving you space at the beginning where you can introduce some more elements to your video, whether it's a piece from our library that I'm about to do, or maybe it's another recording. Anything that you want visually can be put on the screen at this point. For us, we're going to go over to our library, and inside of that installed pre-built Camtasia 2023 library, as we scroll down, there is a folder called Titles. If we expand that folder, there's a few different styles of type in here, and I'm going to use my favorite, which is just this big type number 6. When I click on it and drag it down onto the timeline, you'll see that media show up here on the timeline. Bringing the playhead back, you'll see that animation as we play it back of the screen metadata capture. It's just this pre-built template of content. Our video is not about screen metadata capture. It's about finding the webinars. So what do? We click on the media itself and we take a visit to that properties panel on the right because, once again, it's ready for you to make changes to whatever you happen to have selected. These pieces of media inside the library are customizable. They're ready for you to make some changes to it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a theme. Well, what's a theme? A theme is a series of colors, fonts, and icons that you've added to Camtasia. If I hit my drop-down menu at the top, you'll see I have quite a few of them. In fact, I'm just going to choose the Camtasia theme, which is going to add all of our coloring and sizing in the way that it's been pre-built and ready to go. Can you add themes to Camtasia? You sure can. Using that drop-down menu, you can use the Manage Theme button here at the bottom, or you can also find it in the File menu and choose Manage Themes. In here, you can make changes to colors, add different fonts, add different logos and stylings so that when you want to apply it to any of the customizable assets inside Camtasia, you're ready to go. Now, we've changed the color. That was the easy part. Now we just need to change the text. So instead of screen metadata capture, I'm going to say finding TechSmith. Maybe spelling it right. It's always helpful. Webinars. Webinars. How about webinars? No, let's go webinars. I don't even know what a webinar is. So now I have Finding TechSmith Webinars as a customized intro to my video. It took me about, 3 or 4 seconds. If I ever want to change any other aspect of this, like maybe the font or the font color, there is more options available to you in that properties panel. Explore the properties panel. You would be amazed at the depth of changes and customization that you can make. So now that it looks exactly the way that we want, let's just play it back here real quick to make sure it plays out the way we'd like. Spacebar. That looks pretty cool. I like that intro. In fact, I want to use that intro again. Maybe not with the same text, but I like the colors. I like the movement. Remember we said at the beginning of the video that the media bin was for the ingredients of something you're cooking right now and that the library is kind of like your pantry? Well, I'm going to add this to my library, and it's super easy to do. If I come down on the timeline and right-click on that content I just created, the last option in my list is Add to Library. When I click on that, I can rename it to whatever I'd like. So if I say Webinar Intro, It'll add it to whatever library is chosen. In this case, there's a default one, and I have a series of other ones available. By the way, if you want to learn more about how to use libraries inside of Camtasia, go ahead and check out this video when you have a chance. When I hit OK, it is now available in my library, and I can add it to any future project that I see fit. Cool. Well, we have a little problem we've created for ourselves, and that is we added this awesome introduction, but we've left a little bit more of a gap than we needed. So let's close that gap. The easiest way to do it is to simply double click on any of the media that you had shifted over by using that shift playhead movement. It'll snap the playhead to the beginning of that media, and then we just reverse the process. Hold shift on your keyboard and click and drag the playhead back to the left until they merge together. And it's just snapped together, and we go right into our video as before. Now, I think I want to make one more edit, and that is, I'm a music guy. I love adding music to my videos. So I'm going to add a music bed to this video to give it a little bit more polish. Here's how I typically do it. I have a habit of wanting my music on track number 1 inside of Camtasia, but we already have content on track number 1. Well, we can add a track below it by right-clicking on the track itself over on the left and inserting a track above or below. For me, we're going to click below. And that moves everything up, everything stays in sync, and we now have an additional track available to us. Another pro tip, I also don't like the names of the tracks as track 1, track 2. Did you know you could customize the names of the tracks by right-clicking on them and choosing rename track? For example, this one is going to be music because that's where I'm going to keep my music. And I could rename one webcam. I could rename one screen, whatever I want to do to make my editing experience even better. Now we've got a place for our music. Let's go back to the Camtasia library. We'll choose the Camtasia 2023 library from the top, and we'll choose audio. In the audio folder inside of Camtasia 2023, there are 3 audio tracks. You could always import more music, just like we did before, by clicking on that plus button, but I'm going to use one of the tracks that's already inside of Camtasia. In fact, I'm going to use the Hip Hop Chambers one, which is one of my favorites. Adding music is as simple as clicking and dragging it down onto your timeline and placing it where you'd like. So if we play this video back with this music now, by the way, which is royalty free as well. Hey there, Jason with TechSmith. Let's find, we've added cool music, but we've introduced a little bit of a challenge. And that is when I start talking, that music is a little bit too loud. There are lots of ways to address this. I could add audio points by double clicking on this green line down here and dragging down the levels of the audio, but I usually don't have time for that. This is where I'm going to use a pre-built tool inside of the audio effects on the left-hand side called Emphasize. Emphasize is awesome. You simply grab the Emphasize tool and you drag it to the piece of media that you want to be emphasized. In this case, I want the focus of your audio experience to be on my spoken word, which is part of that webcam track. So we'll click on Emphasize, drag it down onto my camera track, my camera media. It will then add it over in the Properties panel. You'll notice there's a little purple button there that says, hey, you can edit this audio in Audiate. If you're interested in Audiate, check out any of these videos that we're showing on the screen right now. Emphasize allows you to emphasize that part of the spoken word. In this case, there's a couple of options you have. The ramping position is just when do you want it to change from the music to the spoken word. You can do it outside, inside, meaning is it before it starts talking, after you start talking. I go right down the middle and choose span. That means as the playhead comes from the music to me speaking, well, let's play it back and you'll hopefully notice a difference. Hey there, Jason with TechSmith. Let's find TechSmith webinars on our webpage. Now, if at any point I still find that music is a little bit too intrusive, if I only really wanted it for the introduction, I can do something as simple as selecting that track, using my tool ribbon, and choosing this tool right here, which is the split button, which allows you to cut a section right in the middle of that media. So now it's 2 pieces, the beginning and the end. I'll select that last section of the music and delete it so it's completely gone. And then so it's not an abrupt cut off of that music, I can go right back into my audio effects and choose the fade out option by clicking it, dragging it onto that music track, and then I should have a nice subtle fade out of the music while the content is being shown on the screen. Let's take a look. Hey there, Jason with TechSmith. Let's find TechSmith webinars on our webpage. TechSmith.com, go to support. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, like I said before, there are so many different things we could add to our project at any time. The lovely part of Camtasia is that I can call this video good and share it with the world right now. But because we saved this project way back at the beginning in that standalone folder, I can come back to this project as many times as I want and experiment. Maybe I don't want my webcam in there at all. Maybe that music was too much. Maybe I want to add some visual effects like callouts or blurring to hide any sensitive information. All those capabilities are there within Camtasia, and I have that flexibility at any time. Now, if you still have questions about anything that we covered today, or possibly about stuff we completely skipped over, go ahead and leave those in the comment section below. And if you want to continue learning, join us at our webinars that we host on a regular basis. There's a link in the video description below. We appreciate you being here, and thanks for watching.